Good afternoon. Welcome to the Kingston Police Services Board Meeting 2302, January 19th, 2023. I'd like to introduce Gail McAllister, who is new to the board, who is wise to many different fields, and we're really excited about her participation in the board. So welcome, Gail. And I'd also like to thank Scott Fraser for accepting the acting chief role. I feel like we're in good hands. So thank you, Scott. So first, we're going to introduce, I'm going to have the acting chief introduce the presentation.
Thank you. A pleasure to see everybody this afternoon. Thanks for being here. So we're fortunate today. We have Inspector Lillian Murdoch and Acting Sergeant Tim Close, who are here to present on behalf of our patrol section, of course, being one of our biggest sections in the organization. I thought it prudent that today's the day we present to the board in that relation. So I'm going to turn it over to Inspector Murdoch and Acting Sergeant Close to take it away. Thank you for being here to both of you as well.
Am I able to share the screen?
Yep, you should be able to. You can just iconize whatever in the background of mine there.
Okay.
Or
So I can just pull
put
this
yours
one?
full screen. No, that's not your presentation. You have the screen up there with your presentation.
It's just giving me options here. So
pick whichever option you need.
this one here. I just don't want to share anything that I'm not.
Yep, double click on that one.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Okay, and now double click. It's not going up, so double click again. Minimize this behind it. That's just the agenda. There you go. Make yours full screen. There. And then share that screen. So close that other screen out.
This one here.
Yep. And go into share screen again. Up at the top.
Can you share?
Yep, go there. And then pick the one that has your full one in, the other one. That one. And close out. Iconize the other two. Don't close that out. I'll lose my meeting.
Sorry, what would you like me to do?
Just drop that down.
Okay.
And they should be able to see that screen. So ask them if they can see the screen.
We do.
Yep.
You do? Okay, wonderful.
It just needs to go into presentation mode.
Perfect.
There you go.
Great. Okay, so, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you today on the Patrol and Communication Division. As mentioned by the chief, I'm Lillian Murdoch, and I'm the inspector who has oversight of the Patrol and Communications Division. And I also have Acting Sergeant Tim Close here with me to assist with any questions or concerns anyone may have. Tim is on C Platoon, and he provides basically operational leadership and manages resources on a platoon, and he's in his 21st year of years of policing. So before we begin, I would just like to recognize our records and system manager, John Bougie, Acting Staff Sergeant Al Melvin, who's assigned to A Platoon, Staff Sergeant Jeff Dempster of our Court Services Unit, all who assisted in supplying the statistical information that will be presented to you today. We have a remarkable group of people who make up our Patrol and Communication Division, and we're really looking forward to highlighting the great work that they do each day. So as you know, officers and members of the Patrol and Communication Division are made up of both sworn and civilian staff members. They provide emergency services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to the City of Kingston. So for those of you who are new to the board, I wanted to point out that the Patrol and Communication Division work on a compressed work week schedule. Both uniformed officers and communicators follow a 4 days on, 4 days off schedule that consists of 2 12-hour day shifts followed by 2 12-hour night shifts. Their first day off starts at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. after completing their last night shift. The division consists of 4 platoons, A, B, C, and D, which complements the compressed workweek schedule. And currently, each platoon consists of 1 staff sergeant, 3 sergeants, 18 constables, and 3 to 4 communicators. We also have a part-time pool of 7 communicators. Our uniformed patrol officers provide policing services to our community through proactive patrol and crime prevention, responding to non-emergency calls, responding to emergency calls, including crimes in progress, enforcement of federal and provincial law and municipal bylaws, investigating complaints and criminal offenses, as well as traffic control and enforcement. We do have a complement on each platoon of officers who have received specialty training, and our carbine operators, breath technicians, and mobile crisis rapid response team workers. We do have 2 officers who are emergency response alternatives, which means that these officers are being developed to become full members. And we have 2 staff sergeants who, on top of their shift rotation, follow an on-call schedule as an incident commander. We also have 1 officer who is in the process of becoming certified as a drug recognition expert. The Kingston Police Communications Center is designated as a primary public safety answering point, which means that in addition to answering non-emergency calls from the public, communicators also answer all 911 calls for Kingston Police, Ontario Provincial Police, Military Police, as well as Kingston Fire and Rescue and ambulance for our area. Our communicators provide call taking and dispatching services. Communicators either dispatch emergency responders from Kingston Police, or they transfer the call to another agency for dispatch. Kingston Police is also a communications backup for Kingston Fire and Rescue, as well as Gananoque Police. Although many in our community may only hear our communicator's voice at the other end of the 911 call or call for service, we see their level of commitment and dedication in ensuring the safety and security of all of our Kingston community. There are our officers and community's lifeline, which is a very valuable resource to our community. The picture that you see here was taken on May 17th. And this was World Telecommunication Day. And these communicators were very lucky to be working on D Platoon with Staff Sergeant Melanie Jeffries, who provided them each a treat basket in her appreciation. To assist in highlighting some of the type of work the Patrol and Communication Division does, we will be offering a brief overview of the number of 911 calls for service, provincial offenses enforcement, certain call types which require frequent response, and our members' demonstrated commitment, and a few notable events. 911 calls for service over the past 3 years are outlined on the chart on the left-hand side of the slide. In 2022, the Kingston Police Communications Center received a total of 62,987 911 calls. This is an increase of 6.51% over 2021, where 59,137 911 calls were received. This appears to be consistent with the annual increases observed in call volume. There was a 6.89% increase in 911 calls received by the Kingston Police from 2020 to 2021. Calls for service are what we refer to as computer-aided dispatch calls, and they refer to what uniformed officers are actually dispatched to. So in 2022, we responded to 76% of all of those 911 calls. In 2021, we responded to 82% of the 911 calls. And there may be many reasons that could attribute to this difference, and such causes may include receiving multiple 911 calls for the same incident. So almost everyone now has a mobile device, and if an incident occurs in a highly populated area, we have been finding that we do receive multiple calls from different citizens reporting the same incident. An example of this may be a motor vehicle accident. However, receiving multiple calls speaks very highly to the citizens that we have here in Kingston, especially to their willingness to help others in need and engage the police. Crimes against persons involves the use or threatened use of violence against a person. This may include, but is not limited to, call types such as assaults, sexual offenses, robbery, criminal harassment, and uttering threats. We saw a slight decrease in this category from 2021 to 2022 by 175 occurrences. Such rates may decrease through crime prevention initiatives such as community patrols, community engagement, and/or officer enforcement. We also saw a slight decrease in the number of intimate partner violence occurrences, previously known as domestic violence, which may have also impacted the decrease we see, and I'll be speaking to that a little bit later in the presentation. Property crime involves illegal activity involving the transfer or destruction of property. This may include, but is not limited to, break and enter, mischief, theft, and fraud. We see a slight increase in property crime. Theft under 5,000 seems to be the most predominant occurrence. And reasons for this increase may include a variety of social issues. Considerations in this regard may include COVID-19 related impacts over the last year. Provincial offense notices are regulatory, so they're non-criminal offenses. This may include, but is not limited to, violations under the following acts: Cannabis Control Act, Highway Traffic Act, Liquor Licensing Control Act, and Reopening Ontario Act. This graph shows our statistics from 2021 in orange and 2022 in gray, and include the Cannabis Control Act, parking, other POA, which would include the Reopening of Ontario Act, bylaws such as noise complaints and nuisance parties, the Highway Traffic Act, the CAIA is the Compulsory Automobile Insurance Act, and the Liquor License and Control Act. Although we saw increases in areas such as the Highway Traffic Act and bylaw enforcement, our provincial offense total numbers have slightly decreased from 3,718 in 2021 to 3,460 in 2022. I did note that we issued 59 provincial offense notices under the Reopening Ontario Act in 2021, which is captured under the other POA on the graph, which we did not see this year. I would also like to mention that although patrol officers perform a great deal of traffic enforcement, the bulk of Highway Traffic Act enforcement is conducted by the traffic unit within our core unit. Aspects of this enforcement may be impacted by training and/or fatal motor vehicle collisions. Kingston Police works under the COAST, which stands for Community Outreach and Support Team, and MCERT, Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team models, the latter of which partners a mental health worker with a uniformed patrol officer. These programs are operated in partnerships with addiction and mental health services, and our Mobile Crisis Rapid Response Team consists of crisis workers paired with specially trained uniformed officers. These teams respond to emergency and non-emergency mental health related calls from within our community as a uniformed response. We have officers paired with crisis workers between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 a.m., 7 days per week. Community Outreach and Support Team, or COAST, consists of addictions and mental health services, plainclothes workers who provide follow-up to members within our community by appointment. Both responses support individuals in crisis and divert individuals from emergency rooms where possible. So you can see over 2021 and 2022, calls for service and the number of apprehensions have actually decreased. And we are very hopeful and suspect that these program models are having a positive impact on our numbers in this regard. Intimate partner violence occurrences, previously referred to as domestic violence occurrences, refer to any conflict between two or more persons who are in an intimate relationship, whether living together or not, where the police have been called to the scene. This includes conflicts and incidents where criminal or provincial offenses have occurred, Intimate relationships do not include parent-child or sibling-sibling conflicts. In 2022, the Kingston Police responded to, on average, 3.89 occurrences per day of intimate partner violence. This is a slight decrease from 2021, where we were responding to, on average, 4.27 occurrences per day. Intimate partner violence is captured under our crimes against persons and would be a contributing factor for our slight decrease. Between 2021 and 2022, we saw a decrease of 136 occurrences. The difference of occurrences in our crimes against person category was 175. As you can see, this accounts for the majority of these occurrences. Police officers are routinely exposed to death-related situations, which may either be direct through natural causes, accidents, or homicides, which we had 6 last year, or indirect through reading reports. In many instances, this includes the officers witnessing the intense emotional suffering of relatives of the deceased. As you know, police officers respond to a myriad of critical incidents over the course of their careers. And unfortunately, our statistics show that our officers are regularly exposed to human tragedies. In 2021, uniformed officers responded to 208 sudden deaths. We saw an increase by 40 in 2022, where officers responded to 248. Uniformed officers responded to the same number of fatal motor vehicle accidents in 2021 and 2022. However, the number of individuals who perished in these collisions increased from 6 to 9. Unfortunately, the unprecedented loss of fellow officers in Ontario and across the country this year has impacted the sworn and civilian members across our organization. These acts of senseless violence impacts not only our members, but also our families, our spouses, our children, and our parents. We recognize the need to look after each other, and we provide excellent resources through our peer support team members, Homewood Health, and Wounded Warriors. This picture was taken of Kingston police officers minus 2 members from our emergency response unit who attended the funeral for the OPP fallen officer. This next slide shows that there have been times where our members have not received their proper breaks through annual leave and/or lunch breaks during the course of their 12-hour shifts. Members of the Patrol and Communication Division are committed in providing consistent and uninterrupted services and ensure that there is safety and well-being for all people in our community. So you can see that the number of communicators who were called in on their annual leave in 2021 was 4, in 2022 it was 14. As like the uniformed patrol officers in 2021, it was 7, and in 2022 it was 18. And again, the missed lunches are down below in the graphs located in gray. Communicators saw the most increase from 27 to 114, and uniformed patrol went from 584 to 800. I just wanted to go through a few notable events to conclude the presentation. Most of these are from 2022, and I do apologize. The officers have done amazing work, and I could go on and on with different events that have occurred, but I'd like to highlight just a few. So in January of last year, Constable Jesse Huron and Constable Joseph Callery were dispatched to a motor vehicle collision with a report of one of the drivers having a seizure. Upon arriving on scene, they located a 44-year-old female who was unconscious and not breathing. Constable Huron immediately started CPR, and Constable Callery quickly retrieved the AED from his cruiser. Regional ambulance officers attended the scene and continued life-saving measures. It was later determined that the 44-year-old female had suffered a heart attack. She thankfully survived, and the doctors did attribute her survival to the quick actions of the officers in attendance that day. The next occurrence occurred in June of last year, where Constables Harvey Kolf and Constable Dan Atwood were on routine patrol. They observed an adult male cyclist failing to stop for a stop sign, and they also observed him carrying a large can of bear spray on his waistband. The male was placed under arrest for possession of the weapon while prohibited, and subsequent to his arrest, the male searched his backpack where they located a 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun and 4 shotgun shells, a large amount of crystal methamphetamine, drug baggies, and scales. He also had a large pair of brass knuckles in his front pockets. And obviously this male is facing a number of charges today. The next 2 occurrences are kind of highlight the caring ways of our communicators. They certainly have helped with many distressing calls for service, but when I spoke to them about this presentation, they were really recalling these 2 positive interactions that they had where they felt that they had really helped citizens in our community and their family pets. I think a lot of them are animal lovers. So the first one speaks to Charlie, and this is the golden retriever in the picture there. He was located by our patrol officers near Division Street and got his name incorrect, sorry. The wrong picture. Charlie is the little dog there on the left-hand side at the bottom of your screen. So that little Charlie there was located by our patrol officers near Division Street and John Counter Boulevard on a Sunday morning around 6 a.m. He spent some time with our dispatchers before finding more temporary services with the Kingston Humane Societies. And his owners were very thankful that when they were reunited with Charlie that same day, and I understand that he had quite the adventure. And now I'll move on to the golden lab. His name is actually Buddy. So in December, we had an adult male passing through Kingston from Toronto. And when he was out on a pit stop, he fell and broke his hip. His 9-month-old lab, Buddy, ran off. He was still attached to his leash, and Constable Nicole accordingly located him. So obviously he had a brief stay with communicators, but due to the circumstances, the Humane Society was unable to help him. However, we were able to find him a temporary home with one of our retired officers until the male could be discharged from hospital. And the last call that I would just like to highlight is one that actually just occurred this month. It was on Thursday, January 5th at 10:42 p.m. An adult male entered the Scotiabank located at 660 Gardners Road in the city of Kingston, wearing a black toque, a surgical mask, transparent latex gloves, and was also carrying a black bag. He approached the bank teller's wicket and held a note for them to read, which stated that he had a weapon and to give them the money. After receiving the money, he left, and he was confronted almost immediately by Constable Anthony Hampton, who had just arrived on scene. The officer engaged with the male, identified himself, told him to stop, and gave him orders to put his hands up. The accused briefly complied by raising his hands, but then dropped them and began to flee towards Gardners Road. Emergency response members, Constable Whitney and Payne, arrived on scene as Constable Hampton confronted the male. All 3 officers engaged in a short foot pursuit as the male attempted to flee from the area. The officers eventually caught up to the male in the middle of Gardners Road, where he was taken into custody and was charged accordingly. So that's just a few little notable events that we wanted to go through. And I think at this time, we'll open it up for any questions.
Anybody on the board have questions? So I have just a question. Anytime food is mentioned, I kind of like pique my ears up, but the uniform officers that miss lunch, over 500 of them, are they permitted to adjust their day accordingly, having missed lunch? Like, is it hours that are like, so say I'm on a call and I miss my lunch, I would, can I go to the gym at 3 o'clock instead of 4 o'clock when my shift would finish, kind of thing? Is it time owed, or how does that work out?
Yeah, no problem. And that's a great question, because we have made some changes over this last year. So normally we would have scheduled a time frame for an officer to take a lunch, and we don't do that currently. So the dispatchers and the communications supervisor, which is a staff sergeant, will start getting officers in for breaks as soon as possible. Sometimes an officer may miss a lunch if they had that scheduled time period, and we don't want that to occur. So it's managed a little bit differently to try to get everyone in for a break as soon as possible. What does happen though is if an officer gets tied up on a call, and it's near the end of the day and they've completed that call, we'll sometimes let them take their lunch at the end of shift. However, if an officer is tied up for their entire shift, from the start of a call, maybe it's a call that takes them, 4 hours, if it's, an apprehension at the hospital, where they're now at the end of their shift, they would put in a slip to receive an hour and a half pay for that lunch. So it's not overtime, it's an hour and a half pay.
Okay. Thank you. And if there's no other questions, then, Brian, thank you. Or Christian was first. Sorry, I just.
I'll defer to his worship.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Christian and Jared. Thank you for the presentation. That was very informative. I'm really interested in some of the trends that you've spoken to. I'll start with one quick question, and then I have a broader question. My just quick question is on the sudden deaths. It was a 20% increase from 2021 to 2022 in terms of the number of times that a police officer has been present at a sudden death. I'm just asking, is that an anomaly? Is there a trend there? Is there something else that's driving that substantial increase?
So we had a difference of, yes, 40 calls for service. Right now, it may be a little bit early to see whether there is a trend there. I think it's something that we're going to have to monitor and look more specifically at the stats in terms of accidental, suspicious, natural causes, for us to maybe give you more of a wholesome response for that.
No, that's great. Thank you. I would be interested just to know if there are any trends underlying that. And then my second question is actually a broader one. Of all the things that you've talked about, I'm just curious to know, what would you say is the biggest challenge in patrol right now? I mean, there's lots of different things going on, I'm sure lots of things that you could have highlighted. What in your view, as a frontline officer, would you say is the biggest challenge that you're seeing on the ground right now?
The biggest challenge I would say is staffing, to be quite honest. So I think we have a lot of officers that are very dedicated and positive, but some are getting a little bit tired and are needing their breaks. They're needing their annual leave. They're needing their lunch breaks. And it just seems the volume that we're dealing with, although it doesn't necessarily show in terms of the calls for service or different, that much of a change or that we're responding to that many calls. I think the demands that are being placed on the officers are a little bit different in terms of investigative requirements that are needed to, complete a criminal brief that may take a little bit longer. We're sometimes seeing, delays at hospitals of no fault of, emergency doctors who may have, 3 ambulances come in at one time and they're not able to see the individual that we brought in under apprehension. And also, I think this, some of the violence and the death that we are seeing seems to have increased as well, which I think just leads to officer fatigue. And I don't want to also ignore the communicators. So we've had a number that have, as you see, I've also missed lunches or been called in on annual leave, and that's strictly due to the commitment because they care about what they do and they care about the community. And it's nonstop. So to be in there and answering, as you heard, it was 69,000 calls without a break over a 12-hour period of time is a very long time. I would like to also if you can give us a little bit of time, I'd like to ask Tim if he concurs with that or if he has anything else that he would like to add. But from my viewpoint, that would be the biggest challenge.
So thanks, Inspector. I would definitely agree with that. I think the number one, speaking as a frontline supervisor right now, I can say that one of the biggest challenges we have day in and day out is staffing in terms of numbers. Just anecdotally, I'm noticing that there's a natural curve to the police profession where around 5 to 7 years, everyone kind of has a bit of a dip where you start maybe seeing the more negative aspects of the job and maybe you've been exposed to more things. And it's a natural part of the process where you might experience a little bit of burnout along that way. And then you get over it, it kind of resets itself and you move on. What I'm seeing as a frontline supervisor is officers with 16 months, 18 months, 2 years on the road who should still be in that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kind of segment of their career are, like the inspector is saying, are showing signs of burnout already. And we've noticed it when we put out a call for overtime, when we do have sickness, even 2 years ago, those shifts would be taken right away. Now it's much harder to fill the spots that are open when we do need overtime coverage. And to me, that's kind of an underlying symptom of officers are getting burnt out, they're getting tired. And it's been a stressful couple of years for everyone in regards to COVID. Just the restrictions and how it's changed the social makeup of things going on. And for police officers, it seems to have just kind of bubbled up, especially in the last year or so. So I would definitely agree with the inspector's interpretation of that and say that I am seeing that on a frontline basis. And it's one of those situations where the less officers you have, the more the other officers have to take on aspects of the workload, and it becomes this vicious cycle where you don't have enough officers. They need to do sick time sometimes just to get rest and take a bit of a break. So I am seeing that from my perspective.
Thank you both for that feedback. That's very valuable.
Thanks. Christian, you have a question?
Inspector Murdoch, you talked about the missed lunches, you talked about people being called in. What do you attribute that to?
So as you saw in the one slide, it was maybe the second or third slide, I talked about our composition of our platoon makeup. So we're currently right now running with 18 officers approximately per shift. So in order to get annual leave time in, we allow 3 officers off at a time. Due to the compressed work week schedule, we also have accrued time that we need to utilize as well by certain times of the year as per the compressed work week memorandum that we have with our association that's attached to the collective agreement. So officers also get a number of hours that they have to use by certain points of the year, otherwise they lose it. So we will go down obviously to 15 officers. Maybe we'll have 1 or 2 off with accrued maximum. If we should get any sickness, we're running quite slim. And that doesn't always allow us to get all of the breaks in for the shift. And unfortunately, there isn't kind of provisions that would pay out that accrued time right now. It's a use it or lose it.
How many platoons does Kingston Police currently run?
So we have 4 platoons, A, B, C, and D.
And you say there's 18 members to each of these platoons. Are all of those platoons currently fully staffed?
Yes, they are.
Do you what do you think is the way forward here? So you say you have fully staffed platoons, you're calling in people on overtime. Is the case in communications? Is communications fully staffed? What is the way forward if we have a fully staffed organization and we're still stretched?
So unfortunately, our communications is not fully staffed. That's why in the one slide I did capture it, although it was a very small point, just that we had 3 to 4 communicators per platoon. So we have 4 on 2 platoons and only 3 on the other 2 platoons. We have 2 dispatchers that are currently off due to WSIB, and we also have another communicator that is off on maternity leave. Last year, we experienced similar challenges. We're obviously very supportive of individuals who are taking time off for family in terms of having children and or paternity leave who are wanting to spend that time with their families. And we did manage a few of those last year as well, which also dropped our numbers. So my suggestion was probably presented in the budget, and that was for us to have 20 officers per platoon. We did have that back in 2017 and a few years before that. And just for a number of reasons, we've gone down in numbers and patrol over the years. My other recommendation was to add another full-time dispatcher to our complement. With the introduction of NG911 coming up, where we'll be implementing new systems by the end of October, I think it's also going to increase the demand as we get maybe text message 911 transmissions, which will also put some pressure and more volume on our communicators.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian. Jimmy, you have a question? You're on mute, Jimmy. Jimmy? You're on mute.
Close out of the presentation if you want to go and close out of that screen. Just so when I go back in, I can.
My question is about the staff shorting from the both side and the patrolling and the communication. How you describe the level of service and the quality of the service to the citizen? And if we have a patrolling officer, we are shorthanded on the patrolling side, what is take to get more people, and why we have been short of staff from why we have a short of staff from last few years when the crime rate and the calls and all the other things are increasing, which is also a Christian raised a question about the overtime as well. So when we have so much overtime for the officers, their ability to work is decreased, and ability to make right decision is decreased because of the long hours and tired. What we can do and what kind of help the organization need from the city, from the public, or from the board to provide a better service to our citizens and have a better life for the officers and the people who were working in the force, like a quality of service and quality of job, how we can do that.
You know, I think you mentioned a couple of things there that caught my attention, and obviously things have changed in terms of staffing over the years. We have had a number of officers that have needed to take some time off and away from work. When some have come back, we're delighted to have them back. They're valuable assets to our team, but they may not be fully deployable. So that affects the numbers that we are able to deploy on the road, which affects the numbers of officers that we have on platoon. So although we may not have decreased in numbers in terms of our complement, we may not have the same numbers that we can deploy to frontline response. So I can say at this time that probably due to, our members' commitment and them, maybe working through lunches or coming in on annual leave, I don't believe that there's been any kind of gap in service. What I am concerned about is the officers' wellness and their quality of life and their commitment to, the Kingston Police and balancing work and family. So again, my suggestion is that we may need to hire a few more officers right now to assist with some of those issues that have kind of led us to where we are right now. And I think that that would obviously impact in a positive way to our budget in terms of missed lunches or calling people in on annual leave, and a positive impact to members' job satisfaction and wellness.
And if I may, Inspector.
Yeah, of course.
Just to add to the inspector's comments, that I think the board needs to realize that we've hired some really good young officers over the last couple of years, and I realize that's a team effort in regards to the employer, which is you guys, the city, and our HR. We have a really good, solid, community-minded, hardworking group of officers right now, and I realize that we have some challenges in terms of staffing, but I want the board to realize that from a frontline perspective, I see the work these people do day in and day out. They're just doing a fantastic job, and but like I was mentioning before, their workload seems to be demonstrably higher in the last couple of years. I've been a member of Kingston Police since 2015. I had 13 years of policing in a small town before that. I realize staffing is always a question, and when it comes to how things work, but the board itself needs to understand these officers are doing a great job. It's just to back on what the inspector was saying, it's the extra officers would be incredibly helpful, and it would ward off, I think, some of the signs of burnout we're seeing at a younger age or earlier in the career of the officers.
Also, may I ask your opinion? And I'm on the board from last 2 years and a little over the last 2 years, and I have been hearing this one from last. What's make us to stay behind to not keeping up our staff needs and the things we need to keep the effective service? is that pandemic also played a role into that we are behind to hiring new peoples and having the facility what we need, or it just we was failed to have a better plan to getting people ahead of time to not get into this one? And again, my question is, the reason is for the officers' well-being, being honest and as a citizen, I know what you guys go through, what you guys put up there, but making sure that all of you, all the officers and member of the force has a quality of life and a balance between family and their job. Why we did not think together and collectively in the last 2-3 years to keep it up the staff needs? What was how you see it being a member?
So
I know
guess-
one is $1, so they don't go there. I know what was but what other reason is can be.
I'm sorry, Councillor, I'm not sure if I can think of any other reasons,
can
besides
hop
some
in.
budgetary restraints that may be there. I know that we have requested 8 officers, and we've also requested, 4 full-time members. And I think right now we're looking for the support of the board, and we'll also be looking for the support from the city as well, for us to be able to do that.
And if I
Since
could-
I'm a member of the board, we never deny any request. So far, I remember every request come, we granted for so far.
If I could just hop on for a quick second here, it's kind of in relation to it too. We always work with our complement of officers, and there's obviously a number that is reflective of the organization, and anytime we add, obviously dollars and cents always plays into it, as just discussed. But we also, I think we look at, if we look at the city as itself, as the city grown and the capacity, and it's very difficult because we understand it's tough times and financially, but everything we kind of try to do, it really always comes back to the bottom line and the dollar. And, as we work with our community partners to kind of reduce our calls for service, because when our community partners are stepping in, that means the police aren't the only call in the book that you can phone, because right now we're kind of one of the people that always gets called, so we're getting called to everything. So kind of reducing the calls, those type of things. And of course, what's always on the table, and it's been discussed many times, civilianization, and those are the ongoing conversations as well. So it's a whole kind of mixed bag, but everything always seems to come back to financial.
Well, thank you very much.
We've got to think outside the box.
Gail?
Yes, just a very quick question. You mentioned that in your presentation that over 69,000 calls to your comm center. Is that just what's hived out for Kingston City Police, or is that in total the OPP and the military police, or do you know the percentages for all 3?
So that is the total for all 911 calls. So that would be for Kingston City Police, OPP, military police, Kingston Fire and Rescue, as well as regional ambulance. And I did have a little bit of data on the number of calls where officers were actually dispatched in response to the over 69,000. So in 2022, we responded to 76% of the 62,987 911 calls.
Thank you. That's
answer your
very,
question?
yes, thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Very good. Jimmy, your hand is up. Is that?
Oh,
just-
no, sorry. That's
Okay.
from previous.
So Lillian and Tim.
Jared,
Sorry, Christian.
One quick question. Do you see
Yeah,
any
sure.
opportunities for synergies on dispatch, given that currently Kingston Fire also runs its own dispatch? Do you see opportunities, for instance, of also across the region for synergies on communications? Is there things that, what elements might be within our control, and as the interim chief said, to think outside of the box, and what elements are outside of our control but could perhaps lead to better overall to economies of scale and more effective outcomes for both the public and the members?
I would like to see communication centers sharing dispatchers, maybe within the city or surrounding areas. I think that would be very helpful for us to have the conversation between services may be problematic because we are dealing with associations, and I'm wondering whether or not it would be helpful if the city also maybe got involved in those conversations to see what's available in terms of blending resources.
That's an interesting observation, and with the mayor and the councillor on board, perhaps there's some opportunities for broader conversations in terms of how services are delivered and thinking outside of the box.
Very good, thank you. So that was a lot of information, and you did a really good job, William. Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, and for your time and putting this together. You're the front line, and we listen to what you say. And as to Jimmy saying that we always say yes, that's not necessarily true, but it's definitely a negotiation and it's going to be a conversation for sure. So it hasn't gone on deaf ears. Okay. So thank you for your time. And what we're going to do is we're just going to have a 2-minute recess for Lori to get resituated. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about how.
I didn't need it. That's good.
Are we on break, Lori?
We are just for about another minute, Jimmy.
Okay, I'm gonna grab my coffee.
Chief Fraser, I'm not sure if I'm doing the math correctly, but if we think of 76% of the calls coming into the comm center means that there were 52,000 calls responded to by patrol officers.
Yeah, yes, it's
Wow.
it's very interesting, and we get a call count each day, which helps us kind of so we know how many officers, how many calls, and so we track all that. And it's there's lots going on, and like that's what I say when we're the catch-all for a lot of stuff. It's very interesting.
Thank you. It was a very interesting presentation.
Great.
Greatly appreciated.
I think because I've asked that question as well, Gail, like it's just so many when you compare it to the population of Kingston. And, a lot of those calls would be from people just driving through on the 401 that maybe see an accident or something. So not necessarily our population base making that call.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, Lori, you let us know when you're ready.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, so then I'm going to actually hand it over to you, Lori, for the, actually, I'll ask for if there's a disclosure of conflict of interest. which there's none. Then I'm going to hand it over to Lori for the election of the chair and the vice chair, which happens every year at this time. In accordance with the board's rules of procedure bylaw, and the chair will be vacated. And the secretary to the board will call for nominations for the positions of chair and vice chair for 2023. This item was deferred from December 15th, 2022 meeting. Mostly just for people to be sworn in and to have a full complement of the board. So I will hand it over to you, Lori.
Thank you, Jared. So I will call for nominations for the chair. Do we have a Christian?
I would like to nominate Jared Stearns as chair, and I would like to nominate His Worship Brian Patterson as vice chair.
Okay, we're just doing chair now, so if you can hold the vice chair for till the next motion, that'd be super. Do I have a seconder for the nomination of chair?
Aye.
Jimmy? All in, do you accept the nomination, Jared?
I do.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Seeing no further nominations, can I have a mover and a seconder that the nominations for the position of chair be closed, thereby confirming the election of Jared Stearns as board chair for 2023?
I move.
Jimmy and Mayor Patterson, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one. Super. We'll move on to the vice chair and the call for nominations for vice chair. Christian?
I would like to nominate His Worship Brian Patterson.
Do I have a seconder?
I second.
Do you accept the nomination, Mayor Patterson?
Let me think about it. Yeah, no, I do.
Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Seeing none, I will ask for a mover and seconder that the nominations for the position of vice chair be closed, thereby confirming the election of His Worship Mayor Patterson as board chair for 2023. Mover and seconder? Gail and Jimmy? All in favor? Motion carried. I declare that the nominations are closed and I turn the meeting over to the chair, Jared. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Congratulations, Your Worship.
Congratulations to you and thank you for your leadership.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so let's do a approval of the agenda. May I have a motion for the agenda? Let's see which one. Yeah. Jimmy? Thank you. All in favor? Very good. And then can I get a motion to adopt the minutes from meeting 2301 held December 15th, 2022 to be adopted? Christian, Jimmy, all in favor? Very good, thank you. And then for communications, the following communications from the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Ontario Human Rights Commission, the Office of the City Clerk, and the OASPB. If there's any questions for the acting chief? No, very good. Then I'll ask that those motion for those to be accepted. Good, thank you. Brian and Jimmy, great, thanks. All in favor? Good. Delegations, there is not. Reports. Is there? I'll ask for a motion that the following reports numbered 8A, 8B, and 8C be received for information purposes.
Which one? Which one?
I'm going to ask if the acting chief Fraser, sorry, the following reports numbered 8A, 8B, and 8C be received for information purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, good, Christian. Thank you. Very good. All in favor? All right, then I'm going to ask the acting Chief Fraser if you'd like to speak to any of these reports below.
Certainly. I have Staff Sergeant Jeff Thompson online with us here, who is currently in charge of our Professional Standards Bureau, and I'll let him go through the report in regards to public complaints and the collection of identifying information in certain circumstances. So Jeff, if you could take that away, please.
Good afternoon, board. Thank you for having me again, and very nice to meet those that I haven't spoken to before. For those that don't know, the Professional Standards Bureau is composed of two members, myself and Sergeant Scott Huffman. Sergeant Huffman is a half-time investigator and a half-time responsible for quality assurance. So as part of his duties under quality assurance, he's responsible for monitoring the collection of identifying information that we obtain from the citizens of Kingston when we interact with them. They're commonly known as street checks or contact cards. So Sergeant Huffman reviews every one of those street checks or contact cards that comes into the Kingston Police from our members to ensure that they're in compliance with the guidance from the ministry. I'm happy to report that in 2022, we had no contact cards or street checks that were not in compliance with the guidelines outlined by the province. So barring any questions on that, I'll move to the report on the administration of public complaints. So as you can see in the report, this reporting period is from January 1st to December 31st of 2022. And in that time period that we had 56 public complaints that were sent to us by the OIPRD. That is a 6.6% decrease in the same reporting period for 2021. I would attribute that decrease to a dramatic reduction in complaints that were received in the post-homecoming period over 2021. And I think anecdotally, a lot of that can be given credit to the police liaison teams that did a lot of proactive work within the student community and population over the course of the homecoming period. In terms of how our 56 complaints compares to a lot of our comparable agencies across the province, Barrie had 69 complaints last year, Guelph had 55, Thunder Bay had 65, Sudbury had 61. Two interesting outliers is London, which is approximately 3 times our size. Is approximately 3 times our size, had nearly 200 complaints. So almost 4 times as many complaints. And Belleville, which is half our size, had 38 complaints from the OIPRD. So we, I think, are situated quite appropriately in comparison to the rest of the province. Under item 1 on the report, you can see how they are classified. What I will note, I won't go through all of them explicitly, but what I will say is that often complaints that come in from the public have more than one component to them. So we have selected what would be probably the most serious, if you would say, in terms of this categorization. I think what is really important to note is that we have had 56 public complaints in 2022. And during that same time period, as noted by Inspector Murdoch earlier, we have done 50,000 plus calls for service. And that doesn't take into account every interaction that our members have had with the community, vehicle stops, stopping to talk to pedestrians, interactions with students and schools. Those are only dispatch calls for service. So there's actually many more thousands of interactions that we've had with the public and a relatively small number of public complaints. So on page 2, under item 2, you'll notice the disposition or the findings on many of these complaints. Of those 56, approximately 32 of them were screened out by the OIPRD. I won't go into detail on the screening process, but I've attached that under Appendix A. The OIPRD has a fairly rigorous screening process, and they are all presumptively screened in, which means that if you were to submit a complaint to the OIPRD, it's automatically screened in unless it meets one of their screening criteria. I have the data from the OIPRD, which indicates across the province, or so province-wide, about 2/3 of their complaints are screened out before they're sent to the police agency to investigate. Under item 3, I should also note under item 2, actually, that our primary role is to act as a bridge between the community and the police service. So we always, in professional standards, attempt to resolve the complaint at the outset. Often it's a situation where there's been miscommunication by the officer, perhaps not necessarily misconduct. And we have found that by improving the dialogue and actually speaking to the complainants and making sure that we understand what the concern is and that they understand what our policies and procedures are and what the officers are mandated to do, that open communication can resolve a lot of the complaints on the front end. And you'll see that often through early resolution or informal resolution or even withdrawals, we're able to mediate a lot of these complaints on the front end without there being a need for an investigation. Under item 3, you'll note that we have completed all of the outstanding investigations for 2021. We only have a few investigations to remain to conclude for 2022. That's a large amount of information in a short period of time. So if there's any questions about OIPRD complaints, I'm happy to address them now before I speak to local inquiries.
Does any members of the board have any questions for Jeff? Okay, please continue.
So finally, under item 4, local inquiries. A local inquiry is typically a matter that comes directly to the police service that's less serious in nature. You'll note in the report that there were 10 local inquiries over the course of 2022, which was a decrease of 1 over 2021. 6 of them were found to be unsubstantiated and 4 were resolved informally. Again, that might be something where the service has made an error. And an example I might give is that an officer has lost a particular individual's driver's license, and that we can work with that complainant in order to replace the license and make the situation better and resolve it. So that's just a very small example of a local inquiry. And I think that is everything that I wanted to speak to today, unless you have any other questions regarding the complaint process.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. And just to close that out, our professional standards branch I would hold in high regard, second to none. Building bridges, building trust within the organization and outside. Of course, we're always going to have those issues, but Jeff and Scott with the Inspector Matt Funnell do a tremendous job at that role. And oftentimes it's not the glamorous and the sexy job as it sounds, being professional standards. It's a very important role in every organization. And thank you for all your hard work in there. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jeff.
The last report is the statistical report in relation to our kind of a number of offenses and stuff. That's why I thought it'd be very timely to have patrol here, because a lot of the statistical report numbers, statistics were eloquently answered today, probably with Lillian's and Tim's presentation, and thanks to them for it. It is a myriad of activity. It's a snapshot in time when we look at our statistical reports. We have ups, we have downs. There's a number of things, like I always said, sometimes Mother Nature helps us when it's freezing cold and theft from autos are down because people aren't out. Where we see, different seasons, we have different events that happen. So when we look at it globally, it gives us a better picture, but certainly our crime statistics on a quarterly basis, certainly for us, and we're starting to work a lot more with our crime statistics and have some neat things coming in the future to help drive our policing response and intelligence-led policing, and where we need to be putting the right people in the right places at the right times to make things happen. So if there's any questions specifically about some of these offenses, obviously we discussed theft. Big one, theft of vehicles, which if you haven't seen in the news, and anybody out there watching, there's a new technology now that cars can be stolen in less than 15 seconds. I just got off a conference call at 10 o'clock with the Insurance Board of Canada, and we're already exceeding 2022, and 2022 is the highest number of vehicle thefts recorded, and 2023 is shaping up to double or triple that. So we're asking everybody to get back to the old technology of the club. If we remember, the club was popular 15 years ago. I have a club on my personal car, And it's not cool to be sitting there putting that on your steering wheel, but it's a deterrent. And it's too easy. Doesn't matter what your car is. Lexus and Toyota being the number ones that are being stolen, but it's a prolific issue that we're seeing now. And when the new system is literally going in under the front left fender or right fender of a vehicle, they pull away the fairing that is there, and there's a module that they stick in the car there. And if you go online and see it, or if you're out and you see a car where there's something sticking out near the tire, it could be a stolen car. So please let us know. But lots coming down the pipe on that. So.
Well, Scott, did the insurance board say where these cars are going? Because they all have a number attached to them, so they can't be resold in Canada.
Yeah, well, let's go back to the pandemic question here. And right now, for example, police services in Ontario are having to park vehicles like Chevy Tahoes. You can't get pursuit rated brake pads for a Chevy Tahoe anywhere. So those cars are being parked, and that's the police service. So people who have these type of cars are now looking for aftermarket parts. A lot of the cars being stolen are being parted out because you just can't get parts. And a lot of them are going, into a shipping container, certainly from Eastern Ontario. They're within 4 hours, they're in a container in Quebec, and they're gone overseas through shipping. And so we're starting to see the prolific rise in all of that. And the fact there's just not that many cars available. You go buy a lot and you don't see a lot of cars. And this is what's happening. And there's creative ways now to steal a number of cars and build one with parts from another, and parting it together. So it's literally going to be prolific as we move forward. And
is anything in discussion for the shipping side, like cargo side, if more monitoring or?
Oh yes. Yeah, there's a whole section, the provincial auto theft team, and of course the spots with ports. It's huge, but it's well organized. Oftentimes communities are hit, small communities where they may have, when the supply was there, where they would come in and steal 15 cars from one dealership. And, within a 5-mile radius, there's a transport park. Those are all on a transport and they're gone, and they're traveling down the highway just like a vehicle. We see them all the time, except it might be a tractor trailer load of stolen vehicles. So there's lots of ways being, lots of different systems in play to make this the offense that it is. And obviously there's a lot of money in it.
Interesting. Any other questions for Scott? No? Okay.
Jared?
Yes. Christian.
So, Chief, I know you're new in the role, so if you want to take a pass on this question, please feel free. As you know, there's been an increase in the crime severity index for Kingston. And I'm wondering whether, based on the granularity of the data that is presented here, you can provide us a bit of sort of your own appreciation of the context in which we're in, and that would likely also relate to some of the conversation we heard about patrol earlier on in the meeting.
Yeah, certainly. From our perspective, of course, a lot of the crimes committed in Kingston are not committed by people from Kingston. In particular, when we get to violent crime, the transitory nature of it, people passing through, our connection to the 401 corridor. So when we look at homicides, we look at the influx of opioids, drugs, a lot more firearms, that's all across Canada. We're working on all of those things. So when you put it all together, it's really the perfect storm. So as we just saw today, we have the collection of identifying information in certain circumstances. There is a whole process that police have to undertake in order to stop, and the random stop is gone. And I'm not condoning random stops, trust me, but I'm just telling you, when we're doing wiretaps and doing investigations and we can hear people talking, they know the law just as good as the police and any lawyer. So carrying guns is not, it used to be people rarely carried guns. There's so many guns out there now, it's really, really scary. And people know the officer can't stop you unless there's a valid reason and check you. In the past, where there could be a valid reason to do a stop, let's say it's a high crime area with a pattern of behavior that matches the crime. If you're there investigating a crime, it's one thing, but you know, the officers don't have the ability to do what they did in the past. Is that bad or is that good? That's the jury's still out. You can, you know, we can sit and look at crime stats at the end and go, okay, let's compare them to previous years. Also, the availability is there. We have a justice system right now where we see a lot of recidivism. I'm not the first person here to say, you know, we're seeing a lot of crimes, a lot of serious crimes, including homicides, committed by people who are on firearms prohibitions, who are out on multiple forms of bail, multiple forms of release, that in the past would not have been out. So for example, a breach, if you were charged with an assault, and let's say you had a condition to be at home at 9 p.m. and not consume alcohol, and we caught you at 11 o'clock intoxicated, that's a breach. You know, not many years ago, that would have been an automatic 30 days in jail. The lawyer knew it, the judge knew it, the accused knew it, the police officer knew it. You would go to jail. So for 30 days, that person may be out of the loop. Now, breaching is, you might do that 15 times. There's some, I've seen them upwards of over 40 times on different forms of release. And it's just, it is unfortunate, but we have that. So as I like to say, 10% of the population committing 90% of the crime over and over and over again. So obviously looking at reforming that, but it's a really big, it really is the perfect storm. Police are not as popular as they used to be. It's, you know, we're in a tough spot and some of it our own fault. I'm not pointing any fingers. We can point, the first thing if I'm going to blame somebody, I'll look in the mirror first. But our, like I said, our officers here are doing a tremendous job. Every day I walk through the halls amazed at what's being done and understanding the backside of it being the frustration level, obviously, that, you know, I can say where I live in Kingston, that an individual broke in within a month 5 times, the same person, and the officers caught him every single time, as has been done in many locations. But in 30 days, and they're asking me, why is this person, we have great video, and why is this person still here? And how do the officers answer that? And they're getting faced with that, you're doing nothing. Well, the fact of the matter is the whole system has to work together. And when it doesn't, that's what we're seeing right now. The whole system is not working together, and it's frustrating. And you know, we just saw an officer get killed. There's going to be a lot more on that. And you know, there's an individual who's not to possess firearms out on forms of release, and you know, it's scary stuff. So it's a long answer, but if it was easy, it'd already be solved. But we're in the perfect storm right now, and the term victim isn't being spoken of enough. I've been to meetings with everyone from the justice sector, and I put my hand up at the end and ask, when is somebody going to talk about a victim here? Because we're not hearing that word enough. And that's the victims being lost. And I might get criticized for saying that, but it's reality. And trust me, our officers are there every single day, hearing it from the victims. We're the people that actually deal directly with the victim, and it's frustrating. But they press every day. These officers press on every day. The detectives, the special constables, the officers, our civilian staff, communicators every day. So,
Chief, your assessment
okay.
contrasts in interesting fashions with with the vignettes that Inspector Murdoch presented, because those were essentially like small local sort of vignettes. But what I hear you saying is what Kingston Police actually needs is not vignettes of sort of little local successes, but what we need is vignettes of joint force operations and what Kingston can do with other forces. Is there perhaps here a bit of a takeaway that there is an opportunity for Kingston Police also to perhaps do business perhaps a bit differently?
No, and that's a great question. So just so you're, you know, right now we have we're involved in a number of joint forces operations. Our repeat offender and parolee enforcement unit, the ROPE unit as it's effectively known, the PEN squad, which is joint forces with the OPP in relation to our institutions, prisons. We have a member in the Guns and Gangs unit, regional Guns and Gang unit, which is a funded position through the province. We have a member in the Provincial Weapons Enforcement unit, which is a funded position for the East region. And it's all across Ontario, these positions. We have a human trafficking joint forces operation in which our department is a very much a leader in that. We have our funded position in relation to you know, sex offenders and serial offenders. So we have a number of those, but yes, that is certainly one of the keys, but they're a great opportunity. And sometimes it's great because it's a team and it takes them where the crimes are. So you're hopefully preventing that crime from making it to your community, but we can't stop all of it. So in one way, it's great because we can bring those teams here. It's just, we need to really keep on top of getting them here to combat the action here as well. But it certainly is. And it's the way of the future because we can't do it all on our own. But we only can really control our footprint in Kingston. So we really focus that. And then we start to dabble with our joint forces and working our leverage from our community to benefit this community in this area. So we'll continue doing that for sure, but that's a great point.
Very good, thank you. Gail.
I'm not sure, Chief, if it would be of any help or if it's possible, Mr. Chair, if the boards of police service across Ontario joined in and supported the campaign for us to reinforce how important it is regarding the bail, the early bail, and these types of conditions. I'm not sure, would that help, or is there something that we can do as a board, Chief, to help you, even if it isn't in that broader perspective?
No, that's a great question as well, because what's happening is there has been a real, the Ontario Association of Police Service Boards, the Police Association of Ontario, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the OPP Association, and the Toronto Police Association have all banded together to lobby government to get this change. And on top of it, I also sit on a public-private liaison committee. And there's actually now we're starting to see buy-in from a lot of the larger public sector organization, insurance companies, public companies coming forward to say enough's enough, because they're also the victims in this in a lot of the cases. So that needs to definitely happen. And I would say from the board level that you have your Ontario Association of Police Service Boards. From the mayor's level, you have the Ontario Municipalities, the Association of Municipalities, and anywhere we can, because that's, you would all be shocked when you see how, it's very rare that we have someone, it's their first offense ever committed. I can honestly tell you, I bet you I can't walk through the station and ask the officers, hey, tell me the last time you arrested someone that has no criminal record, or at least you've never dealt with before. So, and there was a time when you could do that, but it is, but I think all of us coming together, enough's enough. I think that's where we're really at. And that's what's driving, absenteeism, because it's the grind every day. And we need to all come together and answer this. And in this society to say, we understand we have to do it within the law. There's, the police make mistakes sometimes, but globally, I think we all need to do a better job of protecting our police, protecting our community, protecting our property. And it's going to take everybody to do it. And eventually, as Canadians, we always sit back and we're friendly and nice, but eventually we get tired and go, enough's enough. And I'm hoping that Canadians are there and certainly Ontarians are there, and we're going to make that step forward.
So that's really good question, Gail. And maybe Laura, we can just put that on the agenda for the next meeting as to how the board can be a part of that. If I'm not mistaken, I've been reading that the premiers have had enough as well, and have the premiers are asking the federal government to make or look at these changes. So very good. Is that it, Scott, for your reports?
Yes.
Good, thank you very much. And then so next we're going to do the recommendation report agreement with Connex, and ask if anyone has questions for Tim Branham, the Director of IT, with respects to this report. And then, so let's hear it. Everyone's got the information in front of them. I'll read it out. That the Kingston Police Board ratify the motion passed by a poll of quorum of board members on
No.
January.
Excuse me, Chair, that's the wrong motion you're reading.
Oh,
We're at the motion that the Kingston Police Services Board enter into an agreement with Connex for the provision
oh yeah, got it. Yep, sorry, didn't turn. The Kingston Police Services Board enter into agreement with Connex for the provision of scale computing HC3 platforms in the amount of $699. Just kidding. $699,000 in 10 cents, including hardware warranty, software, and support for a period of 5 years. So what does this do, Tim?
Thank you, Chair. This is
I should say welcome. My apologies.
thank you. Nice to meet you, everyone. This is to replace our server infrastructure, both here at our HQ as well as at our disaster recovery center at Kingston Fire. All of our server infrastructure here is getting towards the end of its useful life. It's an end of the warranty period, and we need to make some decisions on what to do there as well. We're out of capacity. We don't have any more storage. We can't stand up new server VMs on it. So we need to make a change, and this is what this is for. So this would put a fully redundant cluster here at our HQ, as well as a disaster recovery cluster at our fire center, which is what we have currently.
So I guess just the question is, if we don't, what happens?
If we don't, and we have one of our servers fail, then it could potentially wipe out our entire server infrastructure.
What's a necessity?
Yeah. It is budgeted for. We do have the money that is in the capital operating capital expenses right now. So we're not asking for any new funds. We're just asking for approval to use the funds we have.
I don't know if you're around, but when at present, the software that we have, when was that purchased?
I wasn't here exactly, but it's coming up on the end of the 5th year this year. So it'd be 5 years ago, I guess, at this point. We're just under 5 years. Servers typically have a 5-year life expectancy where they're usually replaced. So we're already past that on a couple of the nodes of the servers, but the last of the nodes will be over life expectancy later on this year.
Bill?
Sorry, I'm not sure if this is just a demonstration of my lack of knowledge and your expertise, but do we actually own the servers that we now have? And if so, do we have any resale value once they're wiped clean? Obviously, they must be some pretty good machines, even if they're obsolete to us. Are they good for anyone else? It just, maybe it's the yard sailor in me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. They do have some resale value, but because they are 5 years, and in terms of IT, 5 years is like, 20, 30 years for anything else, right? So there's potential that somebody might want something, but the amount of effort and work that would go into trying to find somebody that would be willing to take them, especially without any warranty on them, it'd be slim. Usually in cases where I worked at other places, what we would do with old equipment like this is we'd offer it to colleges or universities and see if they wanted it for setting up a test lab for there, because it can be useful in a learning environment where they don't need necessarily the warranty, where they're not going to put any production stuff on it, but no company is going to really risk investing in servers that are already past the life expectancy.
And I love the idea that it's getting a second life in post-secondary. So I kind of have a bias there. So that's fabulous. Thank you very much, Tim.
No problem.
So Tim, I read that you had put the bid out to different companies.
Yeah, there's the three main products when you're talking about hyperconverged servers. There's the scale computing product. There's the one from Nutanix, and then there's one from Dell VxRail. So we got all three quotes that were from the pre-tendered sources. So we didn't have to go out to an official tender process. And we compared them on several different factors. Price is one of them, obviously. Their net promoter score, which is their satisfaction for technical support, getting support from the vendors. The ease of use, system resources in the quotes, because everyone quotes it slightly differently. So we want to make sure that we had room to grow, and then we weren't going to find out that 2 years down the road we're going to be out of resources or have any problems there. So we factored in all those different decisions, and scale computing came out as the cheapest option. It has the highest net promoter score of the bunch, although Nutanix is pretty close. And it's it's dead simple to use. Right now, the Nutanix one that we currently have is the incumbent. We have it here. It was more expensive, but nobody here understands how to use it, except for me, which is a bit of an issue when you have such a small IT team. That I can't be the sole person that knows how to use this product. So going with something that's easier to use that everybody would be able to get up to speed on quickly is definitely an advantage.
So is it, so did the companies that you put the bid out to, were they all 5 years?
Yes.
Basically, so that's like a industry
Just-
standard, I guess. for
Yeah,
what we're
it's a
talking
standard
about?
for server software, server hardware, sorry, it's 5 years.
Do they have, say, this company that you're interested in, do they have so that you can, at a lesser amount, buy in past the 5 years with the?
Yes, so Scale is a little unique in this. They do offer up to 2 years of extended warranty past the 5 years. So after the 5 years is up, we can get into go on an extended warranty with them to continue it. Whereas VxRail and Nutanix, after the 5 years, they're pitching new hardware.
Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry, may I ask just one other quick
Yes,
question?
please.
So just out of curiosity, do we store anything in the cloud, or is everything on the hard drives on the servers?
Good question. Currently, we don't do much cloud storage because we do have certain RCMP requirements. We are restricted on what we can store on the cloud. Just recently, as as about a month ago, the RCMP did open up a little bit more of an opening where we can excuse me, where we can store stuff onto the cloud. But again, it's still very restrictive on what we can store there, and there's a bit more of a learning curve on what we can do and can't do there that we're not quite there yet. We have our IT team is still pretty, I wouldn't say they're new, because I mean, everyone's got like 10 plus years experience, but getting into the cloud right away, it would be very difficult to do at this time, just because of everything else that we got going on and the unknowns that are there, right? Based on our requirements here, because we are a CPIC agency, is different than say like Belleville, for example, that doesn't have CPIC in-house. So, when we have that in-house, we have a lot more stringent requirements, and we have to go through this about a 200-page document that I got to sign my life away saying that I've complied with all the RCMP security requirements. So there's a lot of stuff on that front that it's just, I wouldn't feel comfortable going into that quite yet, just because a lot of unknowns. And even the RCMP, they've said that they've got this, but they haven't produced any documentation or any guides on what we can or can't do yet. It's just it's just saying that, hey, it's coming. So in the future, it's definitely going to be something, but not quite yet.
Thank you, Gil. So Tim, is Connex a company that is okay to use? Like, it's North American, it's someone in the federal system say it's a company that our police force can work with? Has that been looked at?
Yeah, so Connex is just a reseller of the company. So I mean, we're actually realistically, we're getting into the agreement with Scale Computing at the end of the day. Scale is the one that's going to be providing us all the end user support. Connex is the reseller of the product. So they're a reputable reseller. They're located here in Kingston, which is an advantage for us, since we wanted to have somebody that was more local, as opposed to, Nutanix, for example, isn't necessarily local, or VxRail isn't necessarily local. Having that local pair of hands is important to us. But beyond that, Scale Computing is who we would be the frontline support people would be reaching out to, and they're a phenomenal company. I've used them before. I've used Nutanix before, but Scale's always went above and beyond for everything. They've been in business in this particular market space for over 20 years, or almost 20 years, and they're one of the first companies that came out with the hyperconverged server market.
So I guess they wouldn't have access to sensitive information or anything of that sort.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay, good. Anybody? Anybody a whiz with IT? Anyone under 30? Yeah. All right, Tim. All right then, so I guess we're gonna make a motion.
Would be nice.
Brian, good. Gail, thank you. All in favor? Lori, you're good with that? Okay, very good.
Yes, thank you.
If I could just jump in for a quick second, just to give Tim some accolades here. The city came to us with regards to our capital budget and asked if we could really take a hard look at it. Tim's relatively new to the organization. I'm new. Tim's a little newer, but with his experience, his connections, fortunately, he was able to shave a lot of money off, and we'll talk about that after. But thank you, Tim, for all of that.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. Greatly appreciated.
Not a problem. Happy to help.
Very good. Okay, next we're going to go into 9 motions for the OAPSB membership. Now, the Kingston Police Services Board renews its 2023 membership with the Ontario Association of Police Services Board at a cost of $5,584.85 plus HST. May I have a first and a seconder, or is there any questions about that? I think we have to be a part of it. Gail, Jimmy, thank you very much. All in favor? Very good. And then we have the Kingston Police Services Board endorse the Ontario Transfer Payment Agreement between His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario as represented by the Solicitor General and the Board with respect to the Reduced Impaired Driving Everywhere Ride Program grant for 2022, 2023, 2024. First or seconder? Jimmy? Very good, thank you. Gail, all in favor? Thank you. Then we're going to talk about the membership for the OAPSB Zone 2, that the Kingston Police Services Board renews its 2023 membership fees for zone of the Ontario Association of Police Services Board, OAPSB, at cost of $100. We have a first and a seconder. Say very good, Christian and Gail, all in favor. Thank you. And then we're going to this is where the addendum is. So please have the following motion to 9D. Very good. That the Kingston Police Services Board ratify a motion passed by a poll of quorum of the board members on January 15, 2023, pending the regular board meeting, that subject to the approval of the Ministry of the Solicitor General, the Kingston Police Services Board appoint Casey Sands as a special constable of the Kingston Police for the purpose of searching, guarding, and controlling of prisoners, providing security at premises or places occupied by utilized as courts, service of summonses, subpoenas, and other legal documents in the counties of Frontenac and Lennox and Addington, transporting prisoners and executing warrants of committal within the province of Ontario, providing crime scene security and assisting with traffic direction under the supervision of a police officer effective January 16th, 2023. We have a first and a second. Oh, you don't need to. We already did. We did that by that. That was just the to let you know we did that. That's right, Lori? Yeah, okay.
No, we should have a mover and seconder to
Okay,
ratify.
let's do it again. Mover and seconder. Yep, very good, Brian, and
It looks like
Jimmy?
it's my day today.
all in favor. Thank you. Okay. And new business. Staffing update.
Certainly, and I know it's customary here when we have people retiring, we just give you a little kind of vignette of their career here with the Kingston Police. I have two to give you. Derek Frawley So he retires January 31st of this year. Derek started his policing career with the Peterborough Community Police Service in July of 95 and joined the Kingston Police in May of 1999. In his initial years with Kingston Police, Derek was assigned to uniform patrol in the emergency response unit. For the past decade, his talents and aptitude for complex technical computer forensic investigations have been put to excellent use within our criminal investigations unit. In 2013, Derek received a Kingston Police Services Board commendation for the role he played in identifying and locating a suicidal person despite very complex circumstances. Indicative of his dedication to this community, Derek quickly went to work on the case when contacted during his off-duty hours by the investigating officer. It was very time sensitive. He put in the time and additional long hours, changed family meetings, and did the unexpected. And obviously came to a successful conclusion there. Since 2014, Derek has been seconded to the provincial strategy to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation on the internet. One of his many accomplishments was his integral role in the investigation and ultimate conviction of an individual central to an international network that involved the seizure of one of the largest electronic collections of child pornography in Canada. In this investigation, Derek painstakingly searched and found the key to breaking the code to encrypted material on a seized computer. He's also been recognized for sharing his expertise with computer forensics examiners at other police services, which have greatly assisted in coordinating law enforcement efforts in this area. In 2016, Derek was recognized not only by the Kingston Police, but by his peers in the provincial strategy for developing key technological tools to support investigations of internet-based crimes against children. Derek once more received a Kingston Police commendation for his role in Project Springfield, which saw the dismantling of a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, resulting in a successful court conclusion and restitution paid to many of the victims. Despite the highly technical aspect of his role, he's been noted for being able to convey his analysis and findings in a manner that the average person would have no problem understanding. Certainly appreciated by myself. Over 27 years in policing, we wish Derek all the best on his retirement. He'll certainly be missed in our organization, but we have people getting ready to take his role over. Staff Sergeant Stephanie Morgan, also retiring on January 31st. Stephanie Morgan started her policing career in 1996 with the Lunenburg-Mahone Bay Police Service after graduating from the Atlantic Police Academy and after earning a Bachelor of Arts degree from the Memorial University of Newfoundland. She joined the Kingston Police in May of 2000 and was assigned to criminal investigations in January of 2002, ultimately working with the provincial strategy to protect children from sexual abuse and exploitation on the internet. In 2005, she was commended for her initiative and thoroughness in an investigation that resulted in the successful indictment and prosecution of an international sexual predator. In fact, her work on this case earned her the praise of the assigned United States Attorney for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. Stephanie was awarded the 2009 Kingston Police Teamwork Award by her peers for how she had been a main contributor to the sense of teamwork within criminal investigations, particularly with her assumption of the Child Internet Exploitation Team, or the ICE team as we refer to it, a task that she volunteered to take on in addition to her many responsibilities in the sex assault unit. Thanks to her hard work, the success of the ICE program became so evident that a full-time position was ultimately dedicated to this task. Stephanie was promoted to sergeant in January of 15 and staff sergeant in 2021. She takes great pride in her chosen profession and promotes a strong commitment to the core values of the Kingston Police. After nearly 27 years, we wish her the best in her retirement.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So is there any other new business? No, then I would ask that we move to in camera. Been a long public session, so maybe 10 minutes break. Everyone good with that? Okay. Gail, you'll have to leave and then come back in on the other address, just so you know. Okay. Then may I have a motion to move in camera? Thank you, Brian, Christian, very good. All in favor? Thank you. We'll see you in 10 minutes.